Hey everybody, welcome back to Compliance with Kudzai. And yes, I am hot off the presses with a brand new video for you. And in this video, I am going to be talking to you about two key skills that you need to have and hone and work on and understand as a compliance professional. And that is regulatory interpretation and rule application. Absolutely critical foundational skills that kind of are what you use to perform as a compliance officer, to advise as a compliance officer. It all starts with that solid understanding of the rules and regulations and the application of the rules and regulations. So let's jump into it. But before I do, thank you for subscribing to the channel. I see that it's growing. I told you guys last time the goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers before the end of this year, and I think we just might do it. So continue to watch the channel, guys. Continue to support, share with your peers, your colleagues, anybody that you know is interested and looking to learn more about compliance, and put on that notification bell while you're at it, and be among the first to see these videos and learn and digest as you sip on your coffee or other beverage, depending on the time of day. I'm not judging, but yes, do subscribe to the channel and tell your friends about it as well. I really appreciate the support. So let's get straight into this channel video. Let us get straight into this video where we are talking about the art. And I think everything to do with compliance is an artfulness about it. The art of regulatory interpretation and rule application. So let's start with the first one, regulatory interpretation. So when you are embarking on the task, you have a new law ahead of you or something that you are contemplating that has been issued by a regulator. What is it that you are supposed to be doing with that? And we all know lots of laws are written in this very legalese kind of language, thou shalt not, then thou shall, and connect to section 12B3 and 67925, so it can be very challenging. And it's why a lot of employers and recruiters kind of assume that you must have a law degree. But I think, yes, it's important for this particular skill set, but you don't necessarily have to have a law degree, but you have to have the ability to understand what that means. But the good news is if you struggle with that, and you're not a lawyer, but you're someone who wants to be in the compliance space, then most organizations have a legal department. So you can work with them and lean on them for this skill set if it's not something that comes naturally to you. And it will help you learn as you work with your legal team how to kind of read these and look through them. So it's not a complete train smash as far as I'm concerned, but it is something that you will inevitably have to do if you work in compliance, and that is regulatory interpretation. So what are we doing when we're interpreting regulation? I really need to slow down because I get tongue-tied. What are we doing when we are interpreting regulations? We are saying that we have this law that a regulator has issued before us, and we need to understand what is it that they actually require or are saying we must be doing as a business, whether it's under AML and we're talking about customer due diligence and KYC, whether it's market conduct regulations. As a business, as a compliance officer, you need to understand what is it that they are saying, because like I said, the language can be a bit tricky sometimes. So let me give you an example. Let's say we've been issued with new laws and regulations around customer complaints handling, under the treating customers fairly regime, or how we're supposed to be dealing with the designing products and services that are fit for purpose for the customers and making sure we're targeting the correct people so that the wrong people aren't being missold products and services. So those are the kind of laws and regulations you're looking at in the kind of market conduct space. How are you engaging with your customers? So before you as a compliance officer, there's a new law that is talking to these type of issues. How are you interpreting that law? The first thing is the literal interpretation. What is word for word in terms of, Oxford Dictionary understanding or whatever dictionary you prefer, word for word, what does this law actually mean? What does know your customer mean in the literal sense? What does you must have a complaints handling process mean? So understand it at that very basic literal interpretation level first. And then the next layer on top of that is to be able to say, right, what is the spirit of this law actually trying to achieve? Because the simple truth of the matter is laws and regulations are written in a very broad way sometimes because they have to apply to multiple sizes of business, types of businesses with customers, which is why you'll see that regulators have moved from a rules-based approach, do this, everybody, exactly like this, to saying, okay, let's take an outcomes-based, risk-based supervisory approach, which means that although we've written these rules and expect you to abide by them, what we're really trying to achieve is a particular outcome. And we expect you as businesses to know your businesses well enough to say, okay, if we understand what the law or regulation is trying to achieve, how do we make sure that within our context, we are achieving that outcome, which is to handle customer complaints or to design products that are fit for purpose for our specific business. So you have to have the ability to read the law and say, okay, this is the literal meaning of what they require, but in the context of our particular business, how are we going to achieve the outcome that the regulator is trying to achieve by having this law in place? So it gives businesses, organizations, compliance officers a bit of flexibility to be able to say it doesn't have to be a cookie cutter approach. What they do in organization A is exactly what we must do in organization B and C and D, and everyone's doing the identical thing. If your products and services are different, if your customers are different, if your operating model and technology and level of skill and high risk product versus low risk product, all of those things are going to speak to how you interpret the regulation and contextualize it in your business. And that leads me to rule application. Once you have said that this is the literal interpretation, and don't get me wrong, they've moved to outcomes and risk-based approaches in terms of how they expect businesses to interpret laws and regulations, but that doesn't mean, there aren't laws that specifically say 1 + 1 = 2, so you must do customer diligence. You must have this type of you must have a compliance officer in place for a certain type of business. Sometimes the literal interpretation is the only interpretation to be had. It's more when we're talking about these types of things like, okay, you must have a complaint handling process in place. But what that looks like on the ground in real life, and now we're getting into rule application, might look different from organization to organization. So this is where we get into rule application. And the key skill that you need to be able to have here is not taking that cookie cutter approach and say, because we did it this way in this old organization, I'm just going to lift and drop and do it exactly the same in this organization, because companies are different, even within the same industry, different sizes, different ways of working, different risk appetites. So you really have to have the ability to say, okay, now that we are being told that we need to have a complaint handling process in place, or we need to have a way of assessing our products and services that we're launching and saying, how do we make sure that it's fit for purpose for our targets? Now, what are you putting in place on the ground to make sure that that's happening? Do you have a process in place for assessing business products and services and ensuring that, they are, at the right level of risk? You're providing sufficient information in pre-sale and post-sale. Do you have processes in place for handling customers? For some organization, who knows, it might be an AI system that, does that initial filtering and responding. With some people, it's manual processes, and you've got human beings who are calling and engaging with the customers and resolving their complaints. But the regulator is not going to dictate and say, because we said you have a specific rule that you must have a complaint handling process in place, do it this way and take these 5 steps. So it's really about now, when you're applying those rules, understanding the context of your business, understanding the products and services, understanding which customer segments it actually impacts. Does your operating model allow for things to operate in a certain way, or you have to make adjustments to your operating model? So it's all about context. Never ever just take lift and drop. Even if you're going from bank to bank or estate agent to estate agent, there's some things that can fit in that way, but a lot of the time you're going to really have to take consideration of the context of your specific business and say, how does this rule fit my business? And if it can't fit your business, you might need to apply for an exemption that says, okay, regulator, we've looked at it. These are we've tried to, fit this square plug into a round hole. It's just not working for our business. Perhaps we can do it 1, 2, 3, 4 ways to achieve the outcome that you have indicated that you want to achieve, but maybe it doesn't fit squarely within the framework of the rules that they've set. So that's where your skill of regulatory engagement is also going to come in. And you apply for that exemption or to do things a different way. But you can only then have that conversation if you've interpreted the rules and regulations correctly, if you've looked at your context and says, how does this rule apply to our business? Does it fit, or is this a square peg in a round hole kind of situation? Now let's go and have the conversation with the regulator and say, not a good fit for us, but we do want to achieve the outcome, and we think we can achieve the outcome this way. How do I then figure out what the outcome, how do I understand the outcome? I've read the law, but how am I supposed to know what are they trying to achieve? I'm glad you asked. So remember, before a law actually becomes a law, officially is promulgated and now, effective date 24 June or whatever the case is, there is a consultation process that takes place. And in that process, the regulator usually goes to great lengths to explain that this is what we're trying to achieve. This is what the law is. Tell us what you think. And it's always great for you to be a part of that, or at least be reading those discussions and everybody's industry contributions to that consultations and the policy paper and the green papers and the white papers and whatever else it can be. Understanding that as the journey of new regulation and laws goes on before it becomes law is going to be critical to you understanding the outcome, the spirit, the objectives of any piece of law or legislation that will eventually be impacting your business. So get plugged in at that stage in the game. Do lots of reading, lots of understanding. A lot of the time, regulators also issue guidance notes post the law becoming effective, so you can read through that because they provide a lot more clarity around this is what we're trying to achieve, especially when they get to understand the different impacts of the law in different sectors, on different business and industry sizes, and getting that feedback from the industry. They might then issue a guidance note to clarify or say, this doesn't work in this context, so you can do it this way. So always plug into those type of sources, because the rule application and the rule interpretation may, change, be adjusted from time to time. So it's never kind of like a one and done until it's completely bedded in. So you must stay plugged in to the regulatory process to make sure that you know what you interpreted the first time. Now they've issued a guidance note. Does that still align? Do you need to make changes to your understanding? So very critical for you guys to understand rule interpretation, regulatory interpretation, as well as rule application. It's about reading and understanding the letter of law, understanding the objectives of the regulator, and you get that from all that meaty, juicy promulgation kind of reading that you're going to do, and then making sure that it's fit for purpose for your specific context in terms of your industry and your business. And then you can start advising the business on application in the different contexts and the different services and products that they offer, because you've now got a firm handle of that. So these are 2 key skills that you need to hone into, understand them, and apply as a compliance officer. So I want to challenge you to go and read the laws and regulations that apply within your industry. See if you can interpret them in the context of the business that you're working for. And if you're not yet working, just think of any business that you aspire to work in and say, how would this apply? And play around a little bit with some rule application in that respect. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope that information was helpful for you. I'm going to be sharing more on some individual skills. I might touch on some regulatory change, the change management skill, project management skill that sometimes gets overlooked by compliance officers who are preparing for careers in compliance, because the focus is on compliance, which is great, but change management is very, very key skill. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe you can let me know in the comments which skills from a compliance perspective you think you would want me to explain in a lot more detail. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.